Greetings from Tokyo, my dear friends. This is Daisuke, and I very much hope that this video finds you well and in very good spirits wherever you are in the world. And today, if you don't mind, I would very much like to continue on with our journey, our discussions, our discoveries, and our explorations with respect to the recent releases made by the Criterion Collection during this year of 2022. That brings us to that title, which has been released by Criterion this year under spine number 1115, and it is a work from 1975. The filmmaker is Márta Mészáros, and the name of the work is, and please pardon me for my very poor pronunciation, but the name of the work is Örökbefogadás, or in English, Adoption. From 1975, and it is from the great filmmaker Márta Mészáros, and it has in its incredible cast people like Katalin Berek and Günver Vig and Laszlo Szabó and others. I must apologize so profusely, so much for my very poor pronunciation of the Hungarian language. I hope you can forgive me. I am doing my very best, though. And the name of this work is Örökbefogadás, or in English, Adoption, from 1975. Márta Mészáros's work, Adoption. Wow, what a film this is, operating on so many levels, on so many very powerful points of the depth and scope and breadth of Márta Mészáros's cinema, the power of her observation in focusing in on the details of human emotion, human existence, the condition of human drama as it relates to the main characters that we meet, among which are the Katalin Berek character, who is Kata, and the Günver Vig character, who is Anna. And we'll speak about their very powerful and peculiar and incredibly insightfully represented and rendered relationship that we see unfold on screen. And what a it is in many ways the anchor and heart and soul of the film, or perhaps to put it in another way, it is one of a key set of facets in a film that is undoubtedly multifaceted and so nuanced and so multi-leveled to reflect a sense of a reflection, if you will, of the human condition as put on screen or as displayed on screen by the cinema of Márta Mészáros. And to be even more exact or more pinpointing about the film itself and the plot, I think we could focus in on Kata and her journey, as it were. And it starts with a number of details that I think are made very, prevalent and clear through a type of a powerful observational type of cinema that is on display, but through this wonderful analysis of human drama, we see, for example, Kata and her working background and her working class type of background. We also understand that she is in a relationship with the Laszlo Szabó character, who is himself married and with his own family. So he is seeing Kata in this affair relationship. And there are many scenes between the two of them that reveal a sense of earnest honesty. Kata's view on this particular relationship and how she sees, or she seems to be, I don't know if, I mean, it could be described in many ways, but there isn't this sense of a direct antagonism that could result from the married state of the man that she is seeing. her lover, as it were, whereas the drama that comes from adoption comes from other places that could be said to be far removed from a type of artificial sentimentalism of cinema that I think Márta Mészáros would be very much against, and she expresses as much in some of the supplements that we will talk about in the latter half of this video. But on the contrary, or in lieu of this type of approach to cinema as a means to express sort of emotional, sentimental states of human drama, instead, what we get with the Kata story is through her maybe honest assessment of her relationship here, we see another sense of herself emerging that we are privy to. And we see this not just in the scenes in her discussions with Laszlo Szabó's character, but also in other scenes that emerge early on or from the outset, immediately upon the start of the film. Because we know that she visits a doctor and she's trying to get a medical examination to see if she is in a state of if her physical condition is such that she is able to have a child, because Kata is also, we find her at this point in her life living in Hungary, living on her own, but having this intimate relationship with a married man, also having these feelings of wanting to have a child of her own. And this brings about a number of intimate windows into her soul, so to speak, in a way that is, I think, honest, that is very direct, that is very sincere, and that I think do not shy away from a number of the, I think, layers of nuance and layers of complexity that I think are beautifully inherent in the human condition, the state of being human. And what do I mean by this? So, for example, through this feeling or through this desire that Kata has and how she expresses it, we see, for example, how this affects some of the key relationships in her life. Now, one of those relationships we've mentioned already, which is that with her lover, the married man, the Szabó character. And we see how she is very honest about the relationship. She doesn't see her feelings of wanting to have a child necessarily to be interfering, shall we say, with her need to get some kind of her need to get a feeling of satisfaction, an intimate level of satisfaction from this relationship. In other words, the film doesn't set up these two dynamics of her own feelings, Kata's feelings, to be antagonistic against each other, but rather Kata is trying to figure out whether indeed it is possible, say, for her lover to father her child, and for her then to give birth to the child and to raise the child as her own. And here we have a number of very direct conversational points from him to her, from her to him, for instance, about whether she would be emotionally or financially capable of raising the child on her own. How would this affect their relationship? What does that mean in terms of what his own family dynamic is like, and other aspects of that relationship? But as I say, it's not set up in a way to create a sense of dramatic antagonism of these various points of her life, but rather they are set up as various layers, various facets of her own human condition. And I think that's a really important point to keep in mind, especially when we get to another very important aspect of the film, another important relationship, and that is the relationship of the teenage girl, Anna. This is the Gunver Big character, and the set of circumstances that bring Kata and Anna together. And we get the understanding, or we get glimpses into Anna's own life and how she is a type of ward of the state, how there is what could be described as a very cold or distant, or perhaps even almost practically speaking, non-existent relationship between the young teenage girl Anna and her parents, and that will become another storyline when we get to learn more about Anna. And we get to learn more about Anna too because we see that maybe in terms of a parallel line of introspection, or a parallel line of character analysis, when we understand that Kata has these feelings vis-a-vis herself and vis-a-vis her own existence and vis-a-vis her own intimate desires and feelings. We also see her interactions with someone of a younger generation, Anna, and also her life, her state of maybe family ties or lack of family ties, as in a manner of speaking, and also her desire to want to find love, want to find romance, want to find some kind of physical intimacy in the form of the relationship that we understand the young girl Anna also finds herself in. That becomes part of the plot that propels that aspect forward in terms of her relationship with her parents, her relationship with the state, her relationship with Kata, and what that relationship between Anna and Kata is. Because the more we become enveloped into this world, and the more we get to know about these two women, the more we realize that it is a film that is very much bringing human beings together, or characters that are rendered in such a way that can be said to be truly authentic to the hearts and souls and minds of these particular women in Hungary at the time. And it's not dealt with in a way that could be said, I would say, it's not dealt with in a way that has any type of overly sentimental melodrama about it. I mean, there's a sense of drama, there's a sense of family tension, there's a sense of human relationships that can be filled with, or can be described as being filled with, a sense of tension or a sense of fractured nature. But it's not for the sake of creating a type of cinematic entertainment that these fractures or fissures or moments of tension between and among characters are represented or shown, but rather they are, or we understand, or we get a sense that they are capturing the essence of what it is to be human. And when one realizes this, then this film, or watching this film unfold before our very eyes, adoption becomes a really wondrous and overwhelming experience indeed. Because we see, for example, how each little detail of a look, a glance, or a particular motion or gesture towards another might be signifying or saying something about how we view ourselves. And that is in a raw emotional state. That is also in terms of parallelism that can be said to be emerging when we see the relationships between and among generations, the cross-generational divide or unity, as the case may be, what it means in terms of relationships between women and women, between men and women, between friends of a local community, and how that those friendships or relationships can be affected or altered with the introduction of a new person. Perhaps in the story of Anna, this could be in the form of the relationship that she is also seemingly longing for, and that might lead to circumstances that will bring her story to a type of conclusion, and what that means maybe even beyond that particular journey's end, and the sense of uncertainty or unknown that is brought about with it. Also, when we think about the idea of generations and parents and children, or adults and children, or the responsible parties and those to whom they owe a feeling or they owe a sense of responsibility. This becomes, I think, a very, powerful and nuanced example of a sense of not just the interactions between the sexes, but also interactions between generations, and a sense of responsibility, and also a sense perhaps of disappointment and betrayal, and the lack of responsibility or fulfillment of responsibility that leads to, say, Anna and also the other young girls that are part of her clique, that are part of her group, who are without homes, without parents, who are indeed orphaned for one reason or another. And this also leads, I think, in a very nuanced and a very skillfully inserted way. This also leads to a sense of maybe a reflection or a commentary, if you will, on the nature and role of state versus individual, or state and individual. And it is not always or ultimately an antagonistic or ultimately individual soul crushing one. On the contrary, it is one that is filled with a sense of place. It's filled with a sense of time. It is also filled with a sense, I think, of possible connectivity and warmth and compassion, as well as the possibility of what other circumstances might arise and what those circumstances might mean in terms of one's sense of self. And I mean that in a potentially positive way and also in a potentially negative way. Ultimately, however, one of the great strengths of Márta Mészáros's cinema and adoption is the highlighting and showing of the tenderness and the almost the imperceptible nature, or the way in which the relationships seem to almost defy a type of easy classification on a surface level. That's what I think is so great about this film. Each of the relationships is one that is very, as I say, multi-level, multi-textured. It is not simply a relationship between, say, a surrogate mother and a young girl. It is not simply a relationship between two lost souls. It is a relationship, or these are this is a story of relationships between one human being and another human being, and another human being, and another human being. And with that, with all of what that brings and entails in terms of each person having with him or her the sense and scope and expression of the human experience, and how vast and how expansive that potentially is in terms of the emotional landscape that each person brings. And they are brought together in a way that is so focused, so tender, and filled with, as I say, warmth and a type of glow, as well as I think an honest rendering of the uncertainty and doubt and questioning that can always occur in any type of situation that involves a sincere inspection of the human heart and the human spirit as it interacts with not just people on the outside, but also in the inside as well. And I think that is at the very heart and soul and essence and drive that is pushing forth this incredible work, an incredible work of art. It is powerful. It is captivating. It is it is contemplative. It is very commanding, poetic, and beautiful. And as I say, it is filled with great sense of warmth and tenderness and uncertainty and the unknown. And that is oh so human indeed. This is the work from Márta Mészáros, and it is Adoption. So the Criterion Collection has released this work, Adoption, from Márta Mészáros, and it is at spine number 1115, and it is purported to be based on a 4K digital restoration. And according to the tail end of the booklet, and it is a staple booklet, and I'll get to that momentarily. According to the booklet that's part of the Criterion release, Adoption is presented in the aspect ratio of 1.85 to 1. This new 4K digital restoration was undertaken by the National Film Institute Hungary Film Archive in collaboration with the NFI Film Lab and the Hungarian Society of Cinematographers and Binaural Soundtrack, and also Blowball, the short film that is part of the supplements, is also described as Blowball, and the 2019 interview with Márta Mészáros is described as being courtesy of the National Film Institute Hungary Film Archive. So this is a film that is it's stunning to look at, and it's stunning to listen to. And we see the outset, we see the incredible command of the camera work and style, and the vivid degree of detail and how this detail serves the story so well, or I should say serves the human drama so well. It is a degree and command over detail and lines and contours, and the capturing of the human face, the human visage, up close and personal, all the way to the way in which Kata looks out, maybe with the faint appearance of tears that are emerging, or the way of look of uncertainty of Anna, just immediately following a sense of intimate, young, free-spirited love that she might be experiencing in a given moment in time, etc., etc. Also, the feeling of jubilation and joy that is suddenly rocked with a sense of doubt and sadness and trepidation that we see captured in a number of, say, close-ups of some of the young girls that we see in a key sequence, for example, in a wedding festival type of situation. So for these and other reasons, I think we get a real sense of the command and style and craft of Márta Mészáros. And so it is great to see it presented in this vivid, glorious way. And the way it looks and it sounds, it's very impressive indeed. So you're getting a real treat here, I would say, in terms of this particular presentation. So Criterion, this Criterion release is certainly one to celebrate. That is true indeed. And another way too that I think we can say the Criterion release is cause for celebration is the number of supplements that we see also involved here. So what are those supplements that we have? We have a number. The first of such supplements is described as being a video essay from 2021, and it is from the film scholar and expert in the cinema of Márta Mészáros, Catherine Portuguese, and the name of this video essay is The World of Márta Mészáros, and this is approximately 19 minutes. This is phenomenal. I will say it again. This video essay from Catherine Portuguese is phenomenal. It is so well presented. Catherine Portuguese is obviously, undoubtedly, just a brilliant expert, a film expert. She is an expert through and through into the filmography of Mészáros, the life of Mészáros, and she, throughout this video essay, gives us details about the life of Márta Mészáros, her background growing up. She was born in Hungary, but when she was a child, her family moved to the Soviet Union, and therein she experienced a number of very sad and tragic details of her life, among which were the deaths of her parents when she was at a very young age, and also the onset of the war as well, that had a very significant impact on her childhood growing up. And she also, Márta Mészáros, also acknowledges this part of her life when we get to another really incredible supplement that we'll talk about momentarily. But here we get, for example, this aspect of her life early on in her childhood, but then it leads into other biographical details about how Mészáros wanted to, or she aspired to become a filmmaker. And the way that she tried to do this was she tried to go through the Hungarian film school route, but she was rejected. But in lieu of her rejection there, she ended up going to Moscow State Cinema Institute, and then she, according to Catherine Portuguese, became the first Hungarian woman to receive a diploma in film directing. This was in the mid to late 50s, and so this is already an incredible feat in terms of the history of Hungarian cinema. But that incredible progress doesn't end there in terms of the great career of Mészáros, according to Portuguese, because then she describes the working life of the artist Mészáros, and how she returned to Hungary and really focused on documentaries, making documentaries about focusing on individuals, people, with very daily human lives, and a type of tenderness in capturing this type of common everyday human experience in terms of these documentaries. and also how this Portuguese suggests might be said to be reflective in a number of her later feature film works, including Adoption, where we see how the camera, taking Adoption as example, seems to be capturing almost a sense of the real or the quasi-documentary. And this is not only true in the way that the visuals inform this particular viewpoint of her cinema, in terms of, for example, in Adoption, the black and white photography, Lalosh Koltai being a very key contributor in terms of the cinematography, of course, a very key contributor, and a key member and key professional artistic relationship with Mészáros, including on Adoption, not just in terms of the visual motifs that can be suggestive almost of a verite experience, but also in the way in which the film Adoption involves what are described as non-professional actors in a number of the key scenes. And so this is, I think, a really great, insightful aspect of Portuguese scholarship on Mészáros, namely that one of the key distinctive features of Mészáros' cinema, Portuguese contends, would be the way in which there is a real sense of the authentic or true that is expressed through many ways, one of which being the feeling or the sincerity to the documentary spirit. And whether that could be called documentary or quasi-documentary, in either way, I think that is that holds very true. Also included in this great discussion is the relationship between Mészáros and one other great filmmaker from Hungary, which is Miklos Jansa, and here is discussed briefly about the professional and personal relationship between Jansa and Mészáros. But it's an interesting thing too, because this relationship is brought up in other parts of the supplements, and it's referred here to a number of reasons. First of all, that they had a very, I think it's described as being very fruitful and very a meaningful artistic and personal relationship from the perspective of both people. And they eventually parted ways and they split up. But when they were together, there was this a sense of devotion. And also there were things that they both learned from each other, both being artists. But there was also a very important point mentioned here and elsewhere, which is that there was never a sense of for example, Jansa, the filmmaker Jansa, having any direct involvement in the filmmaking process of Mészáros. And so they maybe had a respect for each other and their art, but it was never any kind of direct collaboration between the artists. That's how it's described. And this is referred to also in the way in which Mészáros, and how Portuguese herself describes it, and how Mészáros will also describe it in another supplement, how this is maybe an example of how she felt, or how other filmmakers, other male filmmakers, regarded her during this particular period, into late 1950s into the 1960s. She was a female filmmaker, a very prominent one, that's for sure, but still a female filmmaker. And she does describe scenarios or anecdotes of sexism, and how maybe there might have been instances where she was regarded, say, as the wife of Jansa, and how maybe when she was making a film, there might have been a condescending view that some people might have held against her, to say that, oh, if she's the wife of Jansa, the filmmaker, then Jansa will assist her. No, that sort of condescending view. Whereas, of course, nothing could be further from the truth, right? Which is the idea that she was not just her own independent filmmaker, but incredibly potent vision that also was fueled on by the many relationships that she had in her life, including, of course, Jansa. So there is this, I think, sense of context that is, I think, respectful and very honest in terms of discussion about the relationship with Jansa, but also emphasizing the fact that it is something where she was herself her own artistic force. And also, I should point out that Yansho himself will appear directly in an interview in another supplement. He will make comments that are in line 100% with this type of viewpoint that Portuguese and others posit here. So it's a really, I think, key aspect, not just mentioning Yansho, not just further, I think, solidifying Mészáros' position in the world of the cinema of Hungary at this particular point in time, but also the way in which her position as a female filmmaker is already showing itself in certain, say, anecdotes and the like. And I think a number of comparisons are made by Portuguese and others to, say, other filmmakers like Hitilova or Agnes Varda, etc. So, but this is, I think, a really important aspect that we can keep in mind as we go through the supplement. But it's a very, very important relationship, and so it's great that Portuguese is mentioning it here in such a great and easy to understand way. And then she talks too, Portuguese does, about the cinema style of Mészáros, how Mészáros has this, I think, even-tempered and almost relaxed style, how the script isn't always, say, a sacrosanct thing, but rather Mészáros as a filmmaker seems to be focusing in on what is described as moments in time. And she quotes Mészáros here, "My films," as she quotes, "my films are not at all linear. I record precise moments, but it's only afterward that one understands the conflicts that were there in those moments, each time in a different space." And my goodness, this is such a lovely encapsulation of a type of focus on, say, the human condition. And that focusing itself, or those little details that emerge, I think speak volumes. I think that is being spoken about here. And also in terms of the casting too, Portuguese quotes Mészáros again, quote, "I never give instruction, I never rehearse. I just cast people I'm interested in and ask them to be themselves in front of the camera." I think that too is also very apropos when we think about adoption and other films, and we think about the way in which the casting is so, well, I mean, it's important in every film, obviously, but here there seems to be this strong direct link with the people, the place, the time, and the sincerity of the human condition or the human beings that are on display. And it's all focused on, or it's all delivered through a look, a feel, a touch, the stare of the eyes, the way that the face might show some, or the brow might show some wrinkles in terms of pondering or complexity or despair or unknowing, or love or warmth or kindness, or a type of connection or unity, etc., etc. And to continue on, Portuguese talks too about not just adoption, but about the other great films in Márta Mészáros' career. And this brings me to a really, really critical and valuable point for me as well, which is this video essay by Portuguese also serves as a type of primer or further introduction or summary, if you will, or overview in the life and career of Mészáros. And part of that overview, part of that great overview, is focusing in on a number of the other works, adoption and other films, Diary for My Children, Diary for My Lovers, Blowball, which we'll talk about elsewhere, The Girl, Don't Cry Pretty Girls, 9 Months, the two of them, The Heiresses, etc. And I mentioned too, I should mention some of the what known as the Diary trilogy. So I mentioned Diary for My Children, so let me say Diary for My Children, Diary for My Lovers, Diary for My Mother and Father, and the other key actors and performers that have worked with Mészáros in many of her other works. Lili Monori is mentioned as well. We also have Julia Cinkotsi, as well. And as we mentioned, the Diary trilogy or the Diary films, the character of Yuli, that's also referred to, and also how that is sometimes described. There might be some elements that could be said to be biographical or autobiographical, and some other elements that aren't. And those two, I think, are emphasized not just here but also in another supplement, the hour-long documentary, which we'll talk about momentarily, and other points in terms of, say, how Mészáros was dealing with her own, focusing in on the intimate nature of her art on the one hand, while once in a while, or perhaps even more than once in a while, having to deal with aspects of state censorship. And this had to do with maybe certain scenes in films other than adoption, where she was trying to focus on the way in which maybe certain episodes that might be said to be harkening back to some of her own tragedies in her own life, in particular what happened to her father under Soviet state rule when she was very young, and the tragedy that befell her family because of that, and how maybe in some of her films she was trying to express something that was echoing that, but how she was running against the state censorship machine, as it were. But this is also very much not just in the background, but also very much a part of who she is as a filmmaker, not just in terms of her positioning in Hungarian cinema, but also the Soviet bloc, and also her role as a female filmmaker, and also her own family and personal biographical details growing up, as well as the power of her keen visual sense, the eye, her camera eye, her kino eye, as it were, bringing us focus and bringing us the light of the brilliance of the characters that she's presenting in her films, including adoption. So it is all expressed with warmth, with a great deal of respect, with a great deal of admiration, and so well, clearly presented by Portuguese here, Catherine Portuguese. What a brilliant, brilliant video essay this is. It's great. I saw this countless times, and I couldn't get enough of it. I'm going to watch it again many more times before the year's out. This is World of Márta Mészáros video essay, approximately 19 minutes. Please check it out if you can. It is so worth it. But that's not all in terms of supplements that are so worth it, because the next supplement is another brilliant one. This is described as being from 1978. Katja Raganelli's work, approximately 57 minutes. It is called Márta Mészáros, Portrait of the Hungarian Film Director. It is given the title in the supplement submenu as Portrait of the Hungarian Film Director, although I should point out that it is I understand, a German language film, and the subtitles in English give us not the word portrait, but the word profile. But in any event, I think portrait or profile can serve the same function in terms of the meaning. This is a film focusing in on the filmmaker herself, Mészáros, and this is fascinating. This is so fascinating, a type of one-on-one intimate discussion with a number of clips from some of her films throughout, but mostly focusing in on a sit-down discussion with Mészáros. And this is during a time in the late 1970s when she is making a film which is known in English as On the Move, with Delphine Seyrig and others. And so there's some moments of this documentary, essentially, where we see her on location, as it were, or during filming, shooting, interacting with Seyrig and others, and rehearsing and practicing for various scenes. And we see it's so relaxed, it's so down to earth, and there's nothing of a type of stress level or any. It's just. And she's smiling, and it feels also so productive, and it feels so intimate, and it's so emotionally probing. So it's a fascinating look into the cinematic philosophy, if you will, the artistic philosophy of Mészáros as an artist. And this is true too in the number of topics that are brought up in conversation. So, for example, she speaks about her love and devotion for the city, and she speaks to Hungary and Budapest. And so there is this idea of the way in which the environments and cityscapes are depicted. And we'll actually see a little bit of this. We see it in adoption. And so we see in and we'll see in other ways that the cinema capturing the landscape and the importance of the landscape as well in her films. And so this is one of the focus, or one of the foci, if you will, of the discussions, or one of the discussions with Mészáros in this work. Other topics of discussion are, for example, her take on maybe the artifice of the over reliance on sentimentality in trying to express relationships in cinema. And maybe this is her way of saying that she is trying instead to seek an honest assessment or truth as to the nature of the relationships of the characters. And I think that is very, very succinct and accurate when describing, say, a film like Adoption or others. And another thing, too, that's related to this particular topic is how she speaks about relationships and capturing relationships, and how there is a kind of essential truth about friendship, and particular friendship between women, and how friendship between two women is one of the key components of film Adoption. And Mészáros here in this conversation, she speaks about how sometimes you might have a friendship with someone else, and ultimately, even after many years, ultimately one realizes that that friendship was not at all authentic or true. Whereas there might be other moments or other connections that one might make with another human being that might have not just a ring of authenticity, but also not just the hollow echo, but actual the fundamental nature of what could be called the authentic aspect of a connection between one human being and another. So, and I think this is really brought to the fore in a lovely way in which she describes this aspect of relationships and the 75 film Adoption, and the main character of Kata, and how Mészáros describes her as being, she has a lover, who is married, and Kata is a character who, through her story about wanting to have a child, she is in essence asserting her own individual feelings, her own soul, if you will, what it is that she wants, who she is as a human being. She is asserting herself, and she is indeed asserting herself vis-a-vis her lover. But the film never sets up that dynamic in a way that is pitting one against the other. In other words, she can assert herself, she can assert her want to have a child without sacrificing that relationship that she currently has, the intimate one with her lover. And I think this is really, really key. In other words, her film, Mészáros' film, does not create a sense of false sentimentality for the sake of cinematic entertainment. And I think that might be a good way of describing it. And in that way, it's seeking something alternative, and in that way, there is an aura of truth, or a sense of certain authenticity when we are dealing with these characters. And I thought that was very, very profound. And I love how that particular line of conversation goes. And she also mentions here about how she doesn't like to rely as a hard and fast rule. She doesn't like to rely on the script. The script is not sacrosanct to her, but rather she likes to focus on feelings, emotions, relationships, the feelings that are engendered between and among partners. I think this also goes towards something that was mentioned in the Portuguese video essay that was found earlier here, about how Mészáros describes herself as not wanting to, she wants to cast people in terms of who they are, capturing the essence of their humanity. I think that is also encapsulated so well in this particular discussion here. And two, when we're talking about adoption, I mean, this nearly hour-long discussion focuses on other works by Mészáros, not just Adoption. But if we're talking about adoption, there's also a scene involving a type of wedding celebration party, and how that celebration scene also involves the participation of non-professional actors, and there is a way in which those non-professional actors are responding to this particular moment, and in a very true and honest emotional way. I thought it was very telling and very powerful, and it's just showing a lot of how it is they are that she is responding to as an artist and as someone who is seeking what could be for lack of a better term, a truth via cinema. This is great. Also, there's mentionings of the various relationships that she has. Jan Nowitzki is mentioned, also Yansho is mentioned. We mentioned Yansho in an earlier supplement, and indeed Yansho speaks here as well, and he speaks very candidly about their artistic and personal relationship, and how they didn't necessarily collaborate directly with each other on any project, but they would be, of course, discussing art. They would be having maybe very high-level discussions about art and art criticism and cinema as well. So I think that comes through very well. And she, Mészáros too, focuses, or she has comments about what she learned, how she explains it, what she learned from Yansho, which I think is a really telling and really very candid conversation point that is being had here. So I think for these and other reasons, this particular documentary, this nearly hour-long documentary, Portrait of the Hungarian Film Director, Márta Mészáros, approximately 57 minutes, is another standout. It's really, 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 really brilliant. Just this one-on-one intimate discussion, sitting with the filmmaker, and she's talking about the types of art that we see her early on discussing certain pieces of art that she has collected over the years and putting some works of art on her wall, and how she likes these intimate spaces in terms of her living quarters and the like. So it is a very warm and intimate and close look at this phenomenal artist, Mészáros. So please check this out if you can. This is the Ragged Alley work from 1978, Márta Mészáros, Portrait of the Hungarian Film Director, approximately 57 minutes. And that's not all, because then we get a short film from Márta Mészáros from 1964. This is Bobita, or as it's known in English, Blowball. And this is from, I said, 1964, 21 minutes. This is fascinating. This is so fascinating. So once again, this is earlier in her career, so approximately 10 years or so prior to adoption. And we already have so many things happening in this short film. Brilliant. The look and feel of it. There is this way in which the family spaces are captured and how they are embedded into the larger social and architectural schemes and frameworks of the environment. And I mentioned earlier about how there is this sense of the capturing of the buildings almost in this way. In this film, there's a sense of almost the austerity of that way in which daily life is embedded, almost enmeshed into the larger environmental background that is the cityscape, as it were. So this is a fascinating aspect, and that is going hand in hand with the focus on the intimate and personal and familial, or perhaps maybe another way to look at it, certain perceptions of those familial relationships that might differ depending on which member of that family dynamic one is talking about when one is figuring into this particular focused work. And indeed, the notion of the familial dynamics or lack of familial dynamics, as the case may be, again, depending on your perspective, can be said to be finding its echo later in another work that can be about 10 years or so from this work, Blowball, and that work being Adoption. So already the echoes and parallels, I think, are so strong, so poignant. And also the capturing of, there's some shots here, many shots. I mean, the entire work is filmed so beautifully. And there's some, the opening, kind of the opening credit sequence or the opening montage is a beautifully rendered, photographed metaphor or series of metaphors, as it were, and just the lighting and the way that it captures some of this interaction with a plant. It's quite remarkable indeed. And as I say, nature and environment and architecture are embedded into the familial and intimate landscapes and portraitures that give a sense of the feeling or lack of familial and connectivity dynamics on display in this work, and that, as I say, can be said to be finding its echo in other works by Mészáros, according to Catherine Portuguese and others. So to have a work like Blowball here as part of one's journey and discussion, exploration of Mészáros's work is great. So the 1964 short film Bobitat, or in English, Blowball. And then that's not all, because then we get another supplement from 2019, approximately 9 minutes, and it's described by Criterion as being Berlin Reflections. This is described as the director answers from the National Film Institute of Hungary. This is talking about it's talking about a number of things. So first of all, it's mentioning it's being made in the context of a type of re-release or rediscovery of the film Adoption for contemporary audiences around 2018, 2019, and also in this discussion, talking about the huge critical success that Adoption had in the 1970s, the Berlin Film Festival. Being, I think, very representative of that. And so we have Mészáros speaking one-on-one in this great interview about the experience of the Berlin Film Festival, and also the state of, say, works from the Soviet bloc or works from the East, and film festivals or international European film festivals at the time, and how this was a really big deal, and also the success that Adoption had at that film festival, and indeed across the globe, was a really big deal and groundbreaking, historic. And also Mészáros herself as a filmmaker, and how this really established her international reputation. It's quite incredible indeed. And also there are some really fascinating details about how, for example, say the domestic Hungarian film critics at the time maybe regarded the performance by Katalin Berek, who played Kata, the main character, maybe regarded her performance as being maybe somewhat subpar in terms of acting capabilities. But in fact, when the film was shown in international audiences like Berlin Film Festival, etc., she received rave reviews for her performance. And indeed, there is something very, very introspective, something very almost calm about the nature of her incredibly vast array of emotional exploration that is going on, but it's done in a way that is it's very calm and collected, and it's done in a very contemplative and very purposeful way that takes one's time. But it is always filled with meaning and ideas. So that is a really, really interesting anecdote that Mészáros shares, and she describes it, I think, so modestly as well. She is such a great speaker as well as a great artist, and she describes this point as being it's just one of those things about how maybe some people in some parts of the world might regard a particular acting performance differently than other people in other parts of the world. So that was really a profound observation that she made here. This and other reasons, I think, are points or reason enough to watch this great contemporary conversation with Mészáros. And it starts also with a little anecdote about Claudia Cardinale, so that's also very interesting as well. But the main attraction here is Mészáros herself, and my goodness, what a great main attraction this is, because her words are brilliant, absolutely brilliant. I mean, you're getting so much here for anyone who is being introduced to the world of Mészáros. These other supplements, plus this contemporary produced supplement interview are the way to go. This is so great indeed. So please check this out if you can. Berlin Reflections. And then last but not least, we have a trailer, a type of modern day produced trailer for the work Adoption that rounds out the supplements. So now let's focus on the presentation, the packaging and the booklet. I'll get to the great booklet in a moment, but we have this collage-like look, and the font, it's and the color design and scheme. I think it's incredibly apropos. So well done for this. This also being, I forgot to mention the Blu-ray edition of this great design work. Let me just open it up here. The booklet would go in like so. Excuse me, but then we have, excuse me here. Let me just straighten that. We have that great continuation of a type of capturing of certain film images from the film itself, Adoption, as part of this collage effect. And it's a great effect as well. Art directors Sarah Habibi, Eric Skillman, designer Katya Mejivotskaya. So that art is continued on into the booklet, and it is a great booklet. Not only do we have a number of stills and photographs and images, but we also have a great essay. This is Elena Gorfinkel, Wayward Faces. This is another profound and brilliant essay, so well organized. We go into it's a great supplement to what we got in, say, the Catherine Portuguese visual or video essay. And here we're getting more great stuff. Elements of the biographical details of Mészáros' life, elements of the thematic continuity threads of her filmography writ large, as well as her work Adoption. Focusing in on a considerable amount of detail and thematic themes and concerns, concerns and ideas, I should say. So please check out this essay. It is so well worth it, so worthwhile. And of course, please check it out after you have watched the film Adoption. But once you have seen the film, check out this great essay, because it is another great one indeed. So I think that wraps it up when it comes to this particular discussion of the Criterion release of Adoption. I'm very impressed with this. I am so glad this is here. It, as I say, it provides me with more opportunity to discover the great work of the great filmmaker Márta Mészáros, including, of course, the main feature of this great release, that being the film itself. This great film from 1975, and Ur Befogadás is the title in the Hungarian language, or it is known here as Adoption. So if you haven't seen it, I strongly encourage you to check it out if you can. It is a magnificent work indeed. The work is Adoption from Márta Mészáros. Okay, my dear friends, so that's it for now. And so until we meet again, please be happy and healthy and well, and please keep on watching a lot of great movies. Thank you so much, as always, for your time. I very much appreciate it. Stay strong, stay safe, and cheers.